Corruption in boxing, don't forget the name. Exposing fanboys is the aim of the game. So close your whack-ass YouTube channels, your arguments are lame. I'll put you all to shame. Challenge me to a debate, are you insane? And live the rest of your life in agonizing pain. How you all people doing? Back after a little while. Frustrating period, my system is down, so recording videos has been a little bit incapacitated. But anyway, desperate measures. I had to talk about one of my favourite fighters to watch. A guy I've been following since the amateurs. I've been ringside for two of his fights. Back in 2011, 2012. Oleksandr Usyk makes a return to the United Kingdom this time. The Road Warrior has just been slaying people all around the world. So what a fitting place to now go to the United Kingdom, the apparent hotbed of boxing, to challenge Tony Bomber Bellew from Liverpool, Merseyside, United Kingdom. A fight which is taking place in Manchester for Oleksandr Usyk's unified Cruiserweight World Championships alongside the Ring Magazine belt. In quite an intriguing fight. Usyk had absolutely nothing really to prove at Cruiserweight, but some skeptics sort of pointed out that he hasn't fought the real WBC champion, Bellew, who won it from Ilunga Makabu, vacant belt over in Goodison Park, which was really the highlight of his career. I'm not sure why the WBC gave him an emeritus position. I don't recall if Bellew was injured, but I could be mistaken. Normally the BC would only issue an emeritus position if a fighter is injured, unable to defend against a mandatory. I think Myers Breeders might have been his mandatory, so that could be right. But in any case, he relinquished the belt and went up to heavyweight to find, David Haye. Two absolute mockeries of a fight. So maybe Usyk was conscious that Bellew was the the WBC champion. Breeders won the vacant belt, so there would still be some micro cynics out there. So he's come back to absolutely clean all slates, wipe any sort of doubt within the cruiserweight division after pretty much defeating everybody. So Bellew, I think he's been losing about 20-30 pounds to get back down to cruiserweight, back down to 200 pounds, which shouldn't be too difficult for him. He started off at 175 pounds, so although his body shape is not really one of somebody who's well cut, well defined, has 60-40% say muscle to water ratio, but Bellew is not a drinker. He claims he's never taken any substances. He drinks very, very occasionally, so he doesn't abuse his body in that sense of putting on the pounds. Eating habits, I'm not sure. I presume so. He's got quite a lot of kids, young kids, so when you're socialising with your kids, etc., you tend to eat a lot of rubbish, so maybe that is his weakness in terms of accumulating the pounds. But in all honesty, he's 6'3", same size as Usyk, both 6'3". Interesting enough, Usyk has the slight reach advantage. I'm going on pure memory. I refuse to look at BoxRec. The brain is a muscle, and we must exercise our brain just like all of our other muscles. So you gotta think, use your memory sometimes. So I think Usyk has a 74-inch reach, maybe a couple of inches, 3 or 4 inches bigger than Bellew's, but in terms of arm length, I think they're identical, and that's the key here. Reach can be very ambiguous. It may not be the true defined criteria when you're talking about who actually has the advantage. If they both fired, with a straight arm, both fired from sort of, a parallel position. I think So in terms of the tail of the tape, they're pretty much exactly the same. Bellew, obviously an orthodox fighter. Usyk, a southpaw. Bellew, I think, has 30 fights, maybe 20 by knockout. 2 defeats. The first being to Nathan Cleverly. The second one to Adonis Stevenson. Cleverly was on point. Adonis was a 6th or 7th round stoppage back in Montreal when he challenged for Adonis' 175-pound WBC belt, I believe. Usyk 15-0, I think 11 knockouts. Now Bellew started off from my understanding, he started off as a kickboxer. When he was about 10, 11, he was a brown belt, sort of one off a black. But he was a little bit aggressive, apparently, you know, breaking bones when using his fists. And his father, who was a fighter, you know, convinced Bellew to turn to boxing, as he felt he was better with his hands than he was with his feet. So Bellew switched to boxing. You know, his father had a few amateur fights, so, you know, his father was apparently a real tough guy outside the ring. You know, would pretty much fight anybody. You know, there's rumours that, you know, in 1 or 2 amateur fights when his father was being dominating, he would lose his rag and come out with a stool in his hand ready to hit his opponent. So certainly too aggressive for the boxing ring. So Bellew had a reasonably good amateur career. Fought internationally, various tournaments. I'm not sure whether he medalled at any major tournaments. May have had a Commonwealth belt, but I don't think he was a gold medalist anywhere. May have had about 120 fights or something, maybe 10, 15 defeats, something like that. So probably about the third of what Usyk has fought. So, but he had a reasonably good, you know, the United Kingdom amateur system is, you know, well represented, well funded, so quite decent, you know, well travelled. A lot of international tournaments come into the UK as well. So he's had the ability, you know, certain digression in terms of fighting all different styles. So in the professional ranks, you know, Bellew is talking about this probably being his last fight, which, you know, I find quite ridiculous, as he talked about, you know, 2-3 fights ago being his last fight. He wanted financial security. He said the first David Haye fight was his financial security. The second rematch fight was his children's financial security. To me, that's just a contradiction. If you have children, you know, your financial security is your children's security, so you can't really separate the two. I mean, that is just greed. But, you know, he has a very good relationship with, you know, promoter Eddie Hearn. They're apparently, you know, best friends. So Eddie Hearn's modus operandi has been to make sure Bellew is, you know, exorbitantly wealthy. You know, doesn't have to worry about anything. You know, Bellew claims he's invested his money wisely, and he's got various businesses, you know, a large property portfolio, so he's financially secure. So, you know, this now on pay-per-view will, you know, give him another, you know, six-figure, you know, payday. I presume he'll make a couple of mil from this fight, given that Sky Sports pay-per-view is covering it in the UK, and, you know, licensed in various, you know, 30, 40 other countries, and then the Zone subscription base is also covering this fight for, you know, exclusively in the United States. Now, in terms of the fight, Bellew is convinced that he's going to knock Oleksandr Usyk out. A lot of people seem to be riding on that coattails, you know, falling into that make-believe story that, you know, Bellew, who's at that attitude from the very outset that, you know, nobody has taken him seriously, somebody who's not too well naturally talented, but he has a fearsome, you know, fears no man will step in the ring with everybody. That sort of, you know, Cinderella story, which, you know, I think is all a load of rubbish. I can't see Tony Bellew winning this fight. I can't even see the fight being competitive. You know, and I'll break it down. You know, Bellew, he's fought boxers before. You know, he went 24 rounds with Nathan Cleverly when they were both in their prime, in their young 20s. Cleverly back then was undefeated when they fought. Bellew was relatively inexperienced. He may have had 9 or 10, somewhat 10 or 11 professional fights when they first fought. It was a major step up. It was a reasonably close fight, but you know, Nathan Cleverly was the more aggressive fighter, probably landed the more punches, so you know, he got the decision, you know, got the champion's advantage. So Tony simply didn't do enough to win the belts. Bellew is he was very much an aggressive brawler. You know, 6'3", you know, would use his size and just be teeing off at opponents, pretty much try and trap opponents up against the ropes, and then use long punches. Right hand, left hook in particular has been his signature punch, both to the head and to the body. Not a bad jab, you know. His footwork isn't too bad, you know. He started off as a kickboxer, so he does have ability to, you know, flexibility in his legs to sort of move around the ring. But you know, what you notice when Bellew fought Adonis Stevenson, you know, he was fearing his power, so he was very much on the back foot, trying to pot shot from long range. And he used exactly the same tactics in the first David Haye fight against the power punch as well, forcing Haye onto the front foot. But unlike David Haye, who was absolutely, you know, finished as a fighter even in the first fight, and that was just the way they simply hypnotized the United Kingdom public that, you know, David Haye was a viable opponent. But physically, when you've had, you know, the injuries Haye did, you know, prior to his Achilles tendon rupturing in the fight, you know, when you had rotator cuff, you know, surgically just repaired, reattached, you know, you've had bicep injuries, you know, your upper body, in the way you're flexing, uncoiling your upper body to use what explosive punches use to punch. You know, when you don't have that foundation, you know, that kinetic energy which generates from the punch, you know, which transfers from your feet to your body. You know, your power is highly superficial, and it's been pretty much subsided completely. You know, your power is only really generated by, you know, the strength you actually have in your fists and the speed that you generate through the punch. That's the only type of energy which translates to power. But if you have no feet in the second fight to plant your back foot, to twist your back foot, which initially creates the kinetic energy to actually generate the power. When you don't have that, and then you don't have the upper body movement to transition the power all the way through your body from your legs to your hands, then you have pretty much nothing. So that was pretty much the reason why Bellew was able to take David Haye's punches, and the commentators were going, "Oh my God, Bellew's got a granite chin taking those punches. You know, Haye's a magnificent puncher. You know, 9 out of 10 motherfuckers would have been knocked out," and you know, all the rest of that rubbish, which, you know, promoters tend to do in terms of promoting the fights when they're employed by, you know, the broadcasters. So, you know, you've got to really, you know, shut down the commentary, do your own research, have a look at the fighter's condition. You know, the key for me is don't pay any attention to any of the press conferences whenever the fighters are talking. Totally irrelevant, insignificant. David Haye was sitting there thinking, "Oh, I'm going to knock you out, and I'll knock you out when I want to knock you out," and all that rubbish, and everybody, you know, believed the hype. The same way Chris Eubank Jr. against George Groves. You know, George Groves was, you know, not a good orator nor a good speaker, very timid. You know, doesn't characterize his points very well, whereas, you know, Eubank, you know, has his father's mouth in that sense, and he was able to sell the fight sell what he was going to do, and the public fell for it, and so did the bookmakers. So they say the pen is mightier than the sword, and if you have that ability, then hence why a lot of people were making an earning on YouTube, just spewing rubbish weekly, monthly, yearly, able to get 200,000-300,000 subscribers, and but anyway, that's another point. So ignore all of that. Pay attention to the sparring sessions. Pay attention to all of the workouts. Look at the intensities of the workouts. Can they actually use their upper body? Can they use their legs? How are they punching hard? What sort of drills are they performing? Are they standard drills that an amateur boxer would have learned from the very outset, or sort of more complex drills? And then you can sort of gauge, the sort of conditioning of the fighter. And you can pick up if anybody has any of these injuries, then that's where you can pick them up. Because if somebody clearly has, some sort of Achilles tendons, or, calf injuries, or a bicep tear or shoulder problem, then, they're not going to be moving around, and they're not going to be throwing punches with that sort of virulent force. So from what I can see in this fight, Bellew is in very good shape. Absolutely no injuries. He looks to be training hard. This is the biggest fight of his career. Who doesn't want to leave the boxing game with, all of the belts, undisputed, cement your name in the history books. So it's a massive, massive fight. So if you can't get up for this and train like you've never trained before, then motherfuckers like that don't even deserve to be in the boxing game. So, whereas Oleksandr Usyk now, a very interesting character. People, you got to really, you've got to look at Usyk when he's back in the Ukraine and he's back in training to really gauge what he's like. He's got an unbelievable, infectious personality. It's a pity his English is not brilliant, but his English is a lot better. He doesn't always utilise it over in the UK. But now Usyk's footwork ability, his stamina, his conditioning. For me, I've been really thinking and analysing, and I remember having some conversations with Usyk's previous trainer, James Ali Bashir. It really stems from two reasons. The first being tennis. Now, Usyk is a fantastic tennis player, and playing tennis has been very much part of his unorthodox training sessions since the age of around 10, 11 years old. And if anything, that sort of intensified. He actually plays a lot more tennis now, and it's very much a part of his training camps back in the Ukraine now. So his sessions are very different. He plays a lot of football as well. His training sessions, are crazy. And the second thing is dancing. Usyk loves music, and he just absolutely loves dancing to music. Very good dancer. He's always dancing, and when you see his training sessions in the Ukraine, he brings over, sometimes artists or a lot of his friends all on the microphone, singing, and he's just dancing away. Whether he's having a serious spar session in between, he'll be dancing, or even during the sparring session, he's dancing as well. So and his wife, speaks about it, that when he's at home with the kids or whatever with her, he's always singing in the kitchen, whatever, singing and dancing, so when you got it, when you just have that ability, that sort of affinity to dance, then it does significantly improve your footwork. You're far more nimble, you have that flexibility, you can sort of pivot in and out, and between that and playing tennis, it does exert a lot of force on the knees, on the ankles, etc. But it's a great sport. When you're charging, rallies, you're moving side to side on your forehand, your backhand. That's almost mimicking how you're pivoting from side to side, in your footwork. So, all in all, definitely has a significant impact on your footwork. And Usyk is one of those freak athletes that 200 pounds, but he moves like a featherweight. and in fact he throws more punches than even, you know, I've seen recent 108-pound light flyweight fights, and he's thrown more punches than them. You know, when you're throwing 900 punches, you know, across 12 rounds in the final of a tournament, which is extraordinary. It shows this guy is just, you know, just an exceptional athlete, an exceptional fighter. And in this particular fight, you know, the tactics are going to be quite interesting. Will Usyk be aggressive in this fight? Usyk doesn't really need to fight at short range. He's gonna have to be as busy as he was against you know, as Murat Gassiev, Bellew. Doesn't like a high work rate. You know, he's been outworked in fights. You know, he went 24 rounds with Isaac Chilemba as well. So where was the patented power? You know, 24 rounds with Cleverly, who doesn't have a brilliant chin. We saw what Sergey Kovalev did to him back in Wales when he was the WBO champion. You know, Kovalev destroyed him in, what was it, 2 rounds? You know, Breakdowj as well destroyed him. So where was Bellew's, you know, much patented power in those fights? And with Chilemba as well, 2 fights. Chilemba's quite a difficult target. We know he is long, sort of rangy, you know, likes to lean back on that back foot, fire long right hands, and very good, very underrated fighter. You know, people are raving on about Alida Alvarez now. Isaac Chilemba definitely beat him. It was a very close fight, but, you know, I did a private sort of film study really analysing the fight, you know, slowed it right down, and Chilemba, you know, when he travelled to Canada, you know, won that fight. So, you know, he may not have had any sort of lucrative promoters behind him, or doesn't really have an infectious sort of personality that can sort of generate his profile, but very good fighter, very underrated fighter, you know, been in the ring with all of the best. So, you know, he went 24, beat Bellew in the first fight, no doubt, but it was adjudicated a draw. Bellew got, obviously, the hometown advantage. Second fight, Bellew won it. May have been a split decision, may have been a 1-1-5, 1-1-3. I don't really recall, but, you know, I would probably give the edge to Bellew slightly in that fight. Although, you know, a 1-1-4, 1-1-4 is not a bad call as well, but very close fight. But at no time did I see even Nathan Cleverly or Chilemba or even remotely hurt by Bellew's, you know, straight right hands or his left hooks. And Cleverly took quite a lot of left hooks, but he wasn't visibly hurt. Not from my recollections, although those fights were quite a long time. You know, he's fought punches like Edison Miranda in there, you know, and they sort of, that was at 175 as well, I believe. That was a points win as well, I believe. So not a really in-depth sort of high quality resume. A lot of the knockouts Bellew were sort of at the fighters at the British, Commonwealth, European sort of domestic sort of mid-tier international levels. You know, Ilunga Makabu, who he knocked out, and it was a vicious knockout. You know, put the guy to sleep. But Ilunga did nothing really before and did nothing after. Defeated the veteran Glencoff Johnson. And back in South Africa, when he fought Ilunga, when he fought Tabisa Makunu, Makunu was outboxing him clearly. But Makabu was, you know, the heavier-handed fighter, and I think I remember seeing the fight, I think he stopped Makunu, if you remember, who fought Usyk in the United States. And that may be how he got his shot. That I think he was number 2 with the WBC, and that's how they fought for the vacant WBC belt in Goodison Park, Merseyside, England, when Bellew won by knockout. what is Ilinga Makabu, Junior Makabu done subsequently. You know, I was really hoping he would shine, but his career is unfortunately floated into obscurity. Don't think he's fought internationally ever since. Couldn't really resurrect it, so that's always a tell sign of how good a fighter is. You know, once they've had a defeat, if they come back and won a world title, you know, to really show their character, to say that, look, all right, you know, he got defeated on the night, it may have been an aberration or a lucky punch or whatever, or just lost to the better guy on the night, but he's gone back, made some adjustments, made some, you know, changes, you know, improvements, but no, so Makabu, nah, you know, you have to say was, you know, just a flash in the pan, you know, heavy-handed, but that's about it. Apart from that, there's absolutely nobody. So, you know, Bellew, not a stellar CV at all, nowhere near not even comparable to, you know, Oleksandr's CV. You know, Bellew has fought on the road when he went to Montreal, you know, fought Adonis, but, you know, he got blown out, you know, short left hands, you know, and then up against the ropes, another left hand, was stopped on his feet, I believe, after one knockdown. So I don't think he's got a tremendous chin. I didn't see Adonis really open up that left hand. He was just, you know, shortened the punch a little bit, but he's very heavy-handed. So now Usyk, does he have the power to knock out Bellew? I think he does have the power to stop him. I think he can break him down, definitely. Bellew is going to have to target the body, but Bellew is not really a combination puncher, and he doesn't have that high work rate. He prefers to operate at sort of short mid-range, although he does have the, you know, height and reach, not the advantage, but does have good height and reach when he's fought his opponents, but he's generally done a lot of his damage out short range. You know, once he's had his fight or hurt, then he will tee off. With David Haye, you know, he had the better fundamentals, so he was able to counter punch. Haye was just walking into the target. When you talk about when you go back to Terence Crawford when he won the Undisputed against oh shit, man, what's his name now? I can't believe I forgot the guy's name. From Namibia as well, he was undefeated at the time. You know, people were criticising him for some of the wildest hooks because he was afraid in the fight. So Terence was able to fire, you know, just straight punches down the middle, you know, body shots, head shots, which took him out. That's all, you know, pretty much what Bellew did in the David Haye fight. He just had the better fundamentals. Haye absolutely recklessly flying wild hooks. In the first fight, he was conceding his height by crouching. He was very low. Second fight, he was just... He knew he had no sustainability during the fight, so his objective was just trying to knock him out. That's all he could do. So he had absolutely no defense, just teeing off, had no power, just walking into punches. So all Bellew was able to do was just like, he had the easiest openings to fire left-hand counters, which looked far better than what they were. But again, somebody who has superior footwork is able to not only use a high guard to block those, but he's able to, you know, pivot out of them, use footwork side to side, step back. You know, he's going to be peppering Bellew, you know, forcing him to turn. If you can force Bellew onto him, even better. I think Usyk will just comprehensively outbox him. Bellew has a puncher's chance, but I think Usyk does have a very good chin. I've seen him take some hellacious punches. You know, Krzysztof Glowacki, you know, hit him with some big overhand sort of looping left hands. Marco Huck hit him with some mean straight right hands, 1 or 2 vicious uppercuts, and both of those guys are very heavy-handed. Myris Breeders also very heavy-handed. You know, he was hitting Usyk with some straight right hands, left hooks, some body shots. Didn't really trouble Usyk. The only visible signs, you know, people talk about, you know, the knockdown at the end of the Glowacki fight, but Usyk didn't look to be in any sort of physical trouble after that. I don't know whether that was an off-balance shot or whether it was a flash knockdown, but Usyk was coasting to victory at that sense. He was, you know, pretty much a shutout fight. Now Murat Gassiev, you know, he certainly, because he was comprehensively outboxed, Murat's objective was just to fire, you know, left hands, you know, straight right hands. He was just teeing off. That's all he could do. Usyk had completely shut down his game, frustrated him, kept forcing him to turn, kept forcing him to reset. So all Gassiev could do was trying to connect the left hands when Usyk was exiting, firing off his combinations. You know, when he was right hooking and pivoting off, Murat would fire 1 or 2, you know, huge left hands, right hands, and you could see that, you know, a bit of distress on Usyk's face. And you know, when a guy, you know, as heavy-handed as Murat is teeing off, he's extra loading up those punches. So if they connect, they're gonna definitely hurt, and they would have probably taken out most people. But Usyk, yeah, visibly he didn't really want. You know, he definitely felt the punches, but not to a debilitating extent where, you know, it curtailed his footwork. I mean, his output. If anything, his output increased, so he wasn't reticent of coming back into, you know, punching range. So Usyk can definitely take a punch. Conditioned athlete, you know, he's 31 years old, so, you know, in his physical prime as well. You know, he's got his man strength. So I think he can take Bellew's punches. I think he can take his punches. Early on, he may be a little bit, you know, he's fighting in the United Kingdom. It's going to be a partisan crowd, so he might be a little bit, you know, cautious, you know, feel Tony's power, and then sometimes he can start slow, sometimes he can start fast. It all really depends on his mindset. He's one of those characters that tends to just sort of engineer his own strategy. You know, when you're that good, you can do that. You know, he tends to be the boss. He tends to sort of shape how the trainers work with him, as opposed to the drills that they're sort of trying to inundate within him. He pretty much knows what to do autonomously. So, and that is, you know, that is Ukrainian boxing. It's all about, you know, it's all about a mental fortification that they have, you know, mentally so strong, so durable. Nothing phases them at all, and when you combine that with sort of natural boxing ability, it's a formidable presence. You know, we recently saw, you know, Ryan Martin, when he challenged Josh Taylor, you know, travelled to Scotland. You know, he completely lost his balls. You know, his offence, just undefeated fighter, a guy who had very good hand speed, you know, combination punching, totally shut down because he couldn't deal with the occasion. And that's a mental weakness for you. Even though he was a good amateur and he would have fought internationally, but the ability to transition into the professional ranks and fight under those high pressure situations where you're putting, you know, your record, you know, your undefeated record against, you know, another undefeated fighter. You know, you can't control that. You can't control those nerves. So a lot of this is down to, you know, mentally who's able to execute, you know, their game plans under those high pressure situations. And you know, Usyk, I don't see absolutely no problems with. He seems to be at home everywhere he goes. So, and plus the United Kingdom is a fantastic place for him. It's a very happy place for him. You know, he won the European Championships gold medal in Liverpool. Ironic, you know, Tony Bellew's hometown. You know, that was a great victory. Came back, that was 2010, I believe. 2012, won the Olympic Games. East London, you know, I was there for that against Breakdowj, who he also defeated in the World Championships before. But they, you know, Usyk and Breakdowj have fought quite, I think 5 times. I think Breakdowj has 1 win. But Usyk has beaten some great guys, you know, beaten Bellew as well, you know, beaten, you know, Matt Korobov as well, another excellent amateur. So he's fought guys from everywhere from 168 up to super heavyweight. When he was a skinny, sort of lanky amateur, before, you know, developing up a body, you know, getting that sort of barrel chested. Went up to super heavyweight, you know, didn't have success at the 2008 Olympics, and then came back down to you know, heavyweight and fought, you know, 2012. So, you know, sort of playing around at the different weights, fighting all different fighters, you know, young, fast, short fighters. So very experienced, able to make those adjustments. So all in all, I think it's going to be a comprehensive victory, Oleksandr Usyk. I don't see Tony Bellew posing him much difficulties. I think Bellew will be a little bit more competitive than Murat Gassiev, by virtue of, I think he'd be, you know, a little bit more cuter. You know, Bellew can not only fight on the front foot, but as I mentioned, he can go on the back foot and sort of, you know, change up his tactics and pot shot from some sort of long range. Can be a little bit more cagey as well. You know, he'll try and shell up and then maybe take the fight in latter stages, which what he was doing in some of the early parts of his, you know, domestic fights. So just a little bit more of a cagey sort of veteran, can try those old man tactics, you know, to try and prolong the fight. But if his objective is to try and slow Usyk down like that, then that's the completely wrong strategy. You know, Usyk can go for 12 rounds, no problem. Bellew doesn't really have the best conditioning for 12 rounds, you know, doesn't really maintain a high work rate throughout. You know, he's not an athlete like that. So I can see Usyk breaking him down and getting a TKO. I can really see that. Just peppering Bellew, you know, straight left hands, you know, jabbing his face off, turning him. I really hope Usyk goes to the body, but that is something that, you know, he didn't go to the body against Murat Gassiev, you know, didn't really go to the body against Midas Breeders, you know. It's just one aspect which he's tend to sadly overlook, but it's not been at any sort of great detriment. Or the Breeders fight, you know, was, some people assumed it was a close fight, but, you know, it was, Usyk definitely won the fight. You know, Midas Breeders did not win that fight. You know, 1-1-3, you know, 8 rounds to 4. But it was Usyk's worst training camp. You know, he had problems, as we mentioned before. You know, with Sergey Vatymyryk, and you know, that didn't really work out. So he's gone back to, you know, strategy and you know, conditioning with you know, Lomachenko, and you know, Usyk still does drills with him, still does pad work with him, you know, even devises strategy with him. So Usyk tends to has a good relationship with him, so we'll use him, you know, as a cut man as well, I believe. So Usyk, yeah, I don't know, I'm sort of contemplating you know, a late stoppage, you know, late stoppage or comprehensive points victory. What do you, I don't know, 117, 111 on points, 9 rounds to 3, 10 rounds to 2. You know, no doubt Eddie Hearn is gonna, you know, is gonna be executing wire payments to all of the judges. You know, Tony Bellew is his best friend. You know, would they make an audacious bid to try and rob Oleksandr Usyk, who is a sort of co-promoted by DAZN as well? He's got a free fight deal, you know, and this fight has all been initiated because Usyk wants Tony Bellew, and that is his he wants Anthony Joshua in his third fight. That is the understanding that they've conceived. So Eddie Hearn definitely wants that fight to be in-house. You know, that's his strategy. He tends to do that for all mega showdowns. You know, he will do that with Katie Taylor as well, who I think he's just signed, you know, Amanda Serrano, you know, for a future showdown with, you know, Katie Taylor. So that's what he tends to do, you know, in-house fighters on the one television network. Then, you know, then he'll have a mega fight. So I don't know whether that's in his vested interest to do that. But I think it won't even matter at that stage. I think Usyk will be so far ahead of the cards that even the probability or even the possibility of a robbery would just be, it would be untenable. So a comprehensive points victory, yeah, 9 rounds to 3. I'll go with that. 9 rounds to 3. Usyk exemplifying why he's the best fighter in the world, why I feel he's the pound for pound number one fighter, even though the whole pound for pound concept is something that I you know, vehemently detest, but on balance of resume and skill, I think he's the best fighter. And when I saw him in 2010, I was convinced he was the best then, and he would continue to be the best in the professional ranks. So Oleksandr Usyk, for me, cementing his place, and then after this going up to heavyweight, and you know, that'll be a real test. That'll be, you know, the legacy is already, I think he'll already go down as a Hall of Fame, you know, an all-time great fighter in what he's achieved already, no doubt about it. But what he does at heavyweight up against the behemoths of the division, whether he can compensate 3-4 inches in height, you know, 7-8 reach disadvantage as well, you know, having to put on about 20-30 pounds as well, you know, that shifting out of his comfort zone, you know, the real adversity, you know, the underdog, where he's going to have to deal with heavyweights leaning on him to drain him, to try and fatigue him, frustrate him, clinch him, you know, use their superior strength against him. You know, that's all going to be a different ball game. But you know, that's how we separate the very best from the others. You know, so Oleksandr Usyk for me, Saturday night. Looking forward to it. I think I said enough. Corruption in boxing. Das Vidanya.